Have you ever asked yourself, why do things that seem impossible happen exactly at the moment you feel the weakest? Why does someone step into your life only to leave, leaving behind a space that you cannot name? Or why do the things we try so hard to hold onto gradually slip away? No matter how much effort we put in, there are days when everything seems to be working against you. Work goes off track, relationships fray, health is not what it used to be. You sit there, quietly, and ask yourself, why me? What did I do wrong? But what if all that is not punishment? What if those very events contain deep lessons, sent just at the moment you are ready to enter a new phase of growth? Buddhism and Zen do not teach avoidance of suffering. They teach us how to look directly at suffering as a door opening to awakening. In today's video, we will explore 7 profound principles from Buddhist philosophy that explain why everything happens for a reason, even the things that seem to make you collapse. These are not empty reassurances. This is a different perspective on life, that once you see it, you cannot go back to who you were before. One of the deepest truths that the Buddha pointed out more than 2,000 years ago is impermanence, that everything in life changes. Everything flows. Nothing lasts forever. Yet in a spinning world, the human mind always clings. We search for stability, grip tightly to what we love, hoping they will never change. But life does not operate on what we want. The child grows up, the young become old, the smile quietly disappears after an unremarkable afternoon. We once loved someone with complete sincerity, once had days of endless happiness, once had health, once had dreams, but over time, everything seems to slip through our fingers, leaving in the heart a silent wound. A question without an answer. Why can't the good things stay? In fact, the issue is not in life, but in the resistance in the mind. When we do not accept change as the nature of life, we start to suffer. When a relationship gradually cracks, we hurt. When our appearance changes, we feel sad. When what we expect doesn't happen, we feel disappointed. All those sufferings come from a wrong belief that things should remain exactly as we want, that the person we love will always stay, that happiness must last long, that we ourselves will never change. But life does not promise us that. Everything, from emotions, appearances, weather, to encounters, is governed by the law of impermanence. One day, you suddenly realize that the gaze that once looked at you affectionately has turned away. The room that was once filled with laughter now holds only an uncanny silence. And then you understand, nothing is truly yours forever. Yet, when we dare to face that truth directly, the miraculous begins to happen. Impermanence is not just loss, it is also the door to freedom. Because of impermanence, pain eventually heals. Because of impermanence, troubled days pass. Because of impermanence, you are not the outdated version of yesterday. You can change, heal, and start again. That is what the awakened person sees. That change is not an enemy, but a silent companion helping us grow. Each time something leaves, it makes way for something else to come in. Each time a dream shatters, it is an opportunity to look at ourselves. Each time winter covers the land, a seed boot silently sprouts beneath the soil, waiting for spring. If you are suffering from losing something, know that you are not alone. Each of us has experienced such moments. But instead of asking how to hold on, try asking, what is this teaching me about letting go? When you stop resisting what is leaving, you will no longer suffer as before. You will feel lighter, more serene, and then one day, you will smile and say, "Ah, so, I do not need to hold on to find peace. I only need to accept that everything is changing, and so am I." But we are not always ready to greet impermanence with calmness. Some losses make us suffocate. Some separations we never truly heal from in a lifetime. When a loved one leaves. When a dream falls apart. Or when life suddenly changes direction unexpectedly. We often collapse in a flood of unnamed emotions. Some respond with anger. Some drown in regret. Some coldly deny that they ever expected anything. But whatever our reaction, time still flows. Everything continues to move. Nothing waits for us to be ready. And precisely in the indifference of time, we begin to see the beauty of fleeting moments. That what makes a hug sacred is that we know it cannot last. That laughter among friends is precious because each person eventually walks their own path. Because everything is impermanent, the moments we live fully become eternal in memory. Many ask, how can we learn to let go when our heart is still full of regret? How can we accept change when our soul still wants to hold onto what is old? Actually, no one can teach another how to let go. Only you. After enough long nights, when tears do not fall as easily as before. When one morning you wake and suddenly find yourself breathing easier even though things have not returned to how they were. At that moment you will know. Letting go is not losing, but releasing attachment, the forced clinging, and the illusion that if we try hard enough, everything can stay forever. But life does not run according to our desires. It runs the way it must. And the strange thing is, when we stop wanting to hold on, what is truly worthy will find its way back, if not in its old form, then in a gentler, softer way. A tree that sheds its leaves does not blame autumn. It knows that only by dropping the old can it make room for new buds in spring. People are the same. When life asks us to let go of something, it may be because that thing has completed its role in our journey. It may have come to teach us a lesson, to help us recognize what is truly important, then quietly leave when the time is right. We suffer because we have not yet understood the gentle wisdom of impermanence. We resist because we do not yet believe that there is a greater order silently rearranging our lives, even though we cannot yet see the full picture. But if we are brave enough not to ask, "Why me?" and instead ask, "What is this here to teach me?" then every pain becomes a beginning. Because impermanence not only takes away, it also gives. It removes what is old, what has fulfilled its mission, to make way for something new to sprout. But if we keep holding on to the old, our hands have no room to receive the new. Letting go does not mean abandonment. Letting go means knowing you have cherished enough, and smiling as something softly departs. And miraculously, when you begin to live with an attitude that embraces impermanence, you start to truly appreciate the beauty of every present moment. You no longer rush. You no longer chase after distant things. You sip a cup of tea as if it were the last. You gaze into someone's eyes as if there is nothing left to hurry for. You listen to the wind, to the birds, to your own heart, and realize that life has never been short of magic. Because now you understand, if this moment is so beautiful, then you must live it fully, before it slips away, like everything else once did. And in that fullness of living, you are no longer hurt by change. On the contrary, you become a soft and flowing part of the great dance of impermanence in the universe. You are no longer the one trying to control the current. but the one who knows when to float, steady without clinging, deep without suffering. And then, after living long enough in the light of impermanence, you begin to see clearly that it is not just beauty that flows away, but pain, too, does not last forever. The deepest sadness eventually settles, like the surface of a lake after the rain. A wound that once seemed impossible to heal turns out to be just part of the old skin you had to shed. There are days when you cried over the smallest things. But when you look back, you smile and ask yourself, why did that hurt me so much? Not because the pain was not real, but because you have changed. You are no longer the same person. You, too, are a living manifestation of impermanence. And that, though it may feel unsettling, is also the deepest comfort, that you have the right to change, the ability to heal, and the opportunity to become a kinder and more gentle version of yourself. Nothing is permanent, and that means no sadness is impossible to overcome. When you understand impermanence not just with your mind, but with the deepest vibration of your heart, you stop seeing life through the narrow lens of gain and loss, success and failure, having and losing. Everything suddenly becomes sacred, not because it lasts, but because it is fragile. A sunny day becomes something to be grateful for. A short conversation becomes something to cherish. A single touch of a hand becomes more sacred when you realize it will never happen the same way again. Life, when viewed through the lens of impermanence, becomes precious not because it is long, but because it never repeats. Every moment is one of a kind. Every blink of an eye is a rebirth. And every breath is a chance to live fully, to love deeper, to forgive more easily, and to let go more freely. Sometimes, it takes a major turning point in life for us to finally recognize that the lesson of impermanence has been quietly by our side all along. Like when someone dear to us leaves forever, we suddenly see how precious our time together truly was. Like when we miss a bus, we suddenly understand that second chances are not always guaranteed. Like when an opportunity slips away, we finally realize that our hearts should not delay what is important. And then those experiences pile up, one after another, until eventually, you no longer need the crises to understand. You begin to awaken in the midst of the ordinary. You see sunlight filtering through the leaves and feel its beauty. Needing no explanation, you sit alone, needing nothing, and still feel completely fulfilled. No more chasing, no more demanding, no more thinking that you can only be happy if something comes or someone returns. Because now you know, everything will pass. And you, too, are moving forward, not with fear like before, but with a light soul. Like a late autumn leaf falling with no regrets. That is the moment when you are truly living in the spirit of meditation. No attachment, no resistance, not bound by the past, nor lured by the future. Just being, fully, right now. Realizing that this moment is the only thing that truly exists. Everything else is just memory. Just illusion. And if you can place your whole heart in the present, then even the most fragile things become eternal. Because it is not time that makes something last, it is your full presence in each fleeting moment. So if today you still hear someone say they love you, listen deeply. If you still get to watch a sunset, watch with all your heart. If you still get to live, even just one more day, then live as if you knew that tomorrow makes no promises. Because that is the truth. And that is also the most miraculous gift impermanence offers us, the lesson of living fully. In a world that always changes, yet never stops being magical, people often speak of karma as a vague concept, sometimes tinged with fear, other times colored with fate. Some say, maybe I did something wrong in a past life. That's why I suffer like this. Others sigh, that's just my karma. There's no avoiding it. But through the light of Buddhism, karma is not a curse or punishment. It is a living stream of energy, the natural result of everything we have thought, said, and done, in every tiny moment of life. Karma does not come to get revenge. It comes to teach us something about ourselves. It is the most honest mirror, reflecting our inner state through the conditions around us. When we live in resentment, life feels full of conflict. When our hearts are full of fear, the world suddenly feels unsafe. When we sow love, the people around us seem to soften. Not because the world has changed, but because the energy from within us is shaping how we see everything. Yet some karmas do not come from the present, but are the results of long cycles from the past, maybe a recent past, or a distant memory we no longer recall. A person who keeps falling into painful relationships might think it is just fate. But if we look closely, we may see they carry a deep belief that they are not worthy of being fully loved. And from that belief, they repeat choices, reactions, and expectations that cause the same pain to return again and again. Someone who constantly struggles with money might not be lazy or unlucky, but may carry a hidden fear of scarcity, a fear of losing, and live cautiously, turning away even the opportunities they truly deserve. These are not faults, they are part of the learning journey. Karma does not say, "You are wrong," it gently whispers, "You forgot that you can choose differently." The good news is, karma is not permanent. It is not a scar carved into stone, but more like footprints in the sand, which can be softened if we are mindful enough. Every new choice, every time we pause instead of reacting impulsively, every moment we choose compassion over anger, forgiveness over blame, is a step toward transforming our karma. And slowly, like water wearing down a great rock, our old karma stops holding us as tightly as before. We are no longer victims of circumstance. We become people who can influence our own reality. This does not happen overnight, nor through sheer willpower, but through gentle, steady mindfulness, like the quiet breath that brings us back to the present, where everything can begin again. If you have ever found yourself stuck in a loop, old emotions, old mistakes, the same people appearing and disappearing in the same way, it might not be a coincidence. That could be karma telling you that your lesson is not yet complete. Not to punish you, but to remind you that there is something you still need to look at. And miraculously, when you begin to see with new eyes, with honesty and without judgment, you realize that karma is not a chain, but a key that opens a door you have long been afraid to step through. That door is called taking responsibility for your own inner world. No more blaming life, no more resenting fate, no more waiting for someone else to save you. Because when you change the way you feel and respond to life, life also begins to change the way it appears to you. That is why, in the perspective of Zen, we do not avoid karma, we observe it. We do not hate karma, we listen to it. Because karma is not something that comes from the outside. It is you, it is what you have been, and also the opportunity to become something else. Just like a river that was once polluted, given time, light, and patience, the water becomes clear again. So does the mind. No matter what your past was like, no matter how heavy your experiences have been, the present is still a vast space where you can plant a new seed. And if you nurture it with mindfulness, love, and gratitude, then good fruits are bound to come. Maybe not right away, but they will come. Just like a tree cannot help but blossom when spring arrives, if it has silently endured and grown roots through the cold winter. And as you continue living with that kind of awareness, you begin to realize that karma is not only found in clear actions or spoken words, but it hides deeply within fleeting thoughts and automatic reactions you hardly notice. A jealous glance when someone succeeds, a quiet irritation when you are rejected, a careless word said in exhaustion that seems harmless. All of these are tiny seeds that will grow at some point in the future. And then you understand. The goal of spiritual practice is not to become perfect or never make mistakes again, but to be awake enough to notice what you are planting in every moment. So that when a negative thought arises, you can gently put it down before it grows into an action or outcome. Not because you fear bad karma, but because you no longer want to cause harm to anyone, including yourself. Because karma does not just create external circumstances, it also shapes the way we experience the world. The same event, seen by two people, can trigger completely opposite responses. One sees disaster in misfortune. The other sees it as an opportunity to awaken. This difference does not come from luck or personality, but from mental karma. From how they have trained their minds over time. A person who regularly plants seeds of understanding and letting go will have a steadier inner world. So when they face hardship, they do not collapse right away. They look deeply into the nature of what is happening. They do not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They quietly ask, "What can I learn from this?" And just by changing that question, the whole path of life takes a different direction. It is in returning to karma as a lesson, not as punishment, that we move closer to real healing. We no longer wrestle with the world to change our conditions. We gently transform from within. As long as you are still blaming someone for hurting you, you are not free from karma. As long as you are wishing life would be less harsh, you are still looking outward. But when you clearly see that the hurt only awakened something already inside you, perhaps a fear of abandonment, a feeling of not being enough, or a belief that you are unworthy, then you no longer resent the other person. In fact, you feel grateful, because they became a living mirror, reflecting a wound you never dared to face. And in that gratitude, an old karma is released, not by forgetting, but by seeing and letting go. Karma does not need you to run away or hide. It only needs you to be willing to look, quietly, compassionately, without rushing, without harshness, like a gardener who sees a tree that has not bloomed, not cutting it down, but gently checking the soil, the water, the light, and patiently waiting. You are the same. Maybe you once planted something unwholesome, when you were still unaware, when your heart was too hurt, or when you were just trying to survive in a harsh situation. It is okay. The Buddha never condemned those entangled in karma. He simply showed them a path out of the darkness, using the light they already carried. And if today you have realized this, then you are already standing at the threshold of transformation. You do not need to do anything grand. Just live each day with a little more understanding than yesterday, a little more kindness to those around you, and a little more compassion for yourself. and you are already redrawing the map of your karmic path. Along this journey, you may feel alone at times, because the world out there still believes in punishment. Still clings to the old model of, if you do wrong, you must pay. But a person who understands the path does not live in fear. A person who understands karma does not wait for bad consequences to start living well. They choose to live kindly because they know that every glance, every breath, every action is silently writing the future. No one else can create karma for you, only you can plant it. And only you can reap it. And that is the greatest gift Buddhism offers us. The ultimate freedom does not come from escaping suffering, but from taking full responsibility for your own inner life, gently, yet with great strength. If there is one root cause behind most human suffering, it is attachment, not circumstances, not other people, not fate, but the way we hold onto something inside and refuse to let go. We cling to the image of someone. We cling to an idea of happiness. We cling to an outcome we desire. And when life does not follow the script we wrote, pain begins. Attachment does not come like a storm, it creeps in quietly. Like vines wrapping around the mind, whispering, "Only if I have this, will I be at peace." But that, "only if," is the seed of all restlessness. Someone who loves another to the point of despair, it is not because the love is too deep, but because they have tied the fear of loss to that person's presence. Someone who is exhausted with anxiety over work, not necessarily because the pressure is overwhelming, but because they are clinging to a role as if losing it means losing their entire worth. Someone who cannot sleep over criticism, it is not because the words were too cruel, but because they are attached to a perfect image of themselves, an image that must never be hurt or fail. Attachment often begins with love, with dreams, with beautiful things. But when beauty is not placed in the heart of impermanence, it becomes a chain. We want to hold on to yesterday's happiness. We want the one who once loved us to keep loving us forever. We want the peace from yesterday's meditation to return exactly the same today. And when it does not, we begin to compare, to judge, to resist, and then suffer. But life never repeats a single day. Just like water in your hands, the tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. But if you loosen your grip, you may hold it longer. That is why attachment not only makes us lose what we cherish, it also tires the mind, exhausts us, because we are constantly trying to control, to guard, to fear. We think we are protecting something precious, but in reality, we are quietly breaking it apart. The Buddha taught that suffering does not come from not getting what we want, but from being unable to accept that there are things we were never meant to keep. Attachment is not only holding onto what we have, it is also clinging to what has already gone. Memories, people who have left, dreams that no longer fit who we are. We punish ourselves with questions that begin with, what if I had said something different? Done something else? Held on tighter? Loved deeper? Trusted less? But no what if can ever turn back time. All we truly have is the present, and the act of letting go. But letting go does not mean forgetting or throwing something away. It is an internal act, done with mindfulness and compassion. We let go because we understand. We understand that holding onto something no longer right for us is a form of self-harm. We understand that love does not lie in possession but in the capacity to allow someone to be free. We understand that sometimes, What we need to hold onto is not another person, but the tenderness we give ourselves when something comes to an end. Attachment also arises from fixed beliefs about who we are, how life should be, how others should behave. When reality does not match the pattern in our minds, suffering appears. But where do these patterns come from? From childhood, from society, from things we have been through. And then we apply those old templates to every new situation, every new person, every new feeling, and lose the ability to meet reality with an open, unbiased heart. That, too, is a form of attachment to our own story, and the refusal to see the truth that is right in front of us. But if one day, you are brave enough to gently set down all your templates and step into life with an empty mind, not trying to understand everything, not needing to control, not carrying the idea that I must be this or that, you will feel life begin to soften. You will no longer need to fight, because you have stopped holding on. In meditation, the journey of letting go is not about getting rid of things, it is about softening. Softening your heart toward the things that are not yet how you want them to be. Softening your gaze toward those who have hurt you. Softening your mind toward your own mistakes. And when the heart softens enough, even the hardest things, like fear, anger, or loneliness, begin to melt. Nothing in life can be held forever. But if you let go lightly enough, you can hold everything in your heart without hurting yourself. Like an open hand catching raindrops, and letting them dissolve on your palm, without regret, without clinging. Attachment is natural to humans. But going beyond attachment is a capacity of a mind nourished by awareness and compassion. And when you reach that point, you no longer need to hold on to happiness, because you have become happiness itself. And when you look deeply into the attachments within your heart, you will discover a deeply moving truth. Behind every clinging lies a fear that has never been held. We do not cling to someone because they are irreplaceable, but because we fear the loneliness that may come without them. We do not cling to a job, a title, a way of living because it is too grand, but because we fear that without it, we would become meaningless. And deeper still, we fear that if we lose these things, there will be no one to love, no one to love us, nothing left to make us feel worthy of existing. It is that fear that causes us to hold so tightly to things beyond our control, and unconsciously, we give the world the power to dictate our inner peace. From that moment on, our inner life becomes fragile. A strange look can unsettle us. A single word not aligned with our hopes can rob us of sleep. A small change in plans can shake our emotions like waves on a lake. Not because life is too harsh, but because we gave too much power to what can never be held. So attachment is not just a rope tying us to someone or something outside. It is a crack in our relationship with our own inner wholeness. When we do not feel full from within, we look for something outside to fill the gap, and once we have it, we fear losing it. That cycle keeps repeating itself, from one relationship to another, one expectation to another, one dream to another, and we think that is life. But in truth, it is a running away from ourselves. We are running from emptiness, from unhealed pain, from the feeling of abandonment rooted in distant memories that we may no longer even remember. So letting go of attachment does not mean saying goodbye to someone or walking away from material things. It means turning inward to face that emptiness, and gently listening to it, not trying to fill it, not trying to fix it, just being there with it, like a friend, And it is that very presence that begins to heal the wound. There is a quiet paradox. When we stop trying to hold on, what truly belongs to us will stay. Not because we force it, but because the energy of unconditional love has its own natural gravity. A relationship that must be maintained through control and fear will eventually break. But if it is nurtured with space and freedom, then no matter how far apart, hearts can still find their way back to each other. A dream driven only by pressure and expectation may come true, but it will not bring peace. But if it is nourished by ease and joy in every step, then the journey itself becomes the reward. Letting go does not take away what is precious, it simply allows the precious to exist in its true nature, unburdened by fear and control. Just like a bird can only truly sing when it is not caged, our hearts can only bloom when they are free from the grip of deep-rooted attachments. A sincere meditator does not try to destroy attachment by forcing themselves to let go. They return to a place of loving observation. They see every rope that binds them, not with hatred, but with gratitude, because those ropes reveal exactly where the wounds still lie, where the heart still needs the light of understanding. And in each mindful breath, they slowly loosen those knots, not with knives, not with battles, but with gentle presence, like sunlight melting ice each day without effort. Some attachments take years to recognize, and even more years to dissolve. But the miracle is this: the moment you see it, the journey of letting go has already begun. Every time you choose silence instead of reaction, every time you take a deep breath instead of clenching your fists, every time you smile instead of getting angry, that is when a thread of attachment quietly unravels. No noise, no drama, but with immense power. And then one day, you will wake up and realize that you are no longer afraid of losing. Not because you have stopped loving, but because you have learned to love without needing to hold on. Not because you have become indifferent, but because you have grown generous enough to understand that love is not about possession. It is about allowing things to be what they are, even when that means letting go. And in that release, you are not falling, you are being lifted, supported by a foundation you no longer have to search for, the peace that has always existed within you. There is nothing left to cling to, nothing left to lose, only an open heart, light and free, ready to welcome whatever comes and gently wave goodbye to whatever leaves, like a gentle river that holds onto no boat, yet keeps its beauty all along its journey. And when you have spent enough time exploring your attachments, you will start to realize that some things you thought were love were actually just clinging. Some relationships you thought were sincere were built on the fear of being left behind. Some dreams you chased so tirelessly were not pursued out of passion, but out of the belief that achieving them would make you feel whole, accepted, loved. So you see, attachment does not always show up in ugly forms. Sometimes it wears the disguise of the most beautiful dreams, the most sacred vows, the most seemingly noble desires. And that is what makes it hard to see. It hides in the things we label as essential, irreplaceable. I cannot live without this. But it is those very things that quietly weaken us. Because anything you believe you cannot live without is not love, it is the chain of your own mind. We are taught to try hard, to persevere, to hold on to what we cherish with all our might, and yes, that is true. But no one teaches us that some things will break if we hold on too tightly. No one teaches us that to truly love someone may mean letting them go, if that is what they choose. No one teaches us that the most precious thing is not always keeping something alive, but keeping your heart from being distorted by the desire to possess. And so we grow up, go through many heartbreaks, and learn the lesson ourselves, the lesson that love is not clinging, that hope is not expectation, and that freedom does not come from holding on to everything, but from knowing what deserves to stay and what deserves to leave gently. The people who suffer most in this world are often not the ones who have the least, but the ones who have too many things they cannot let go of. They carry hundreds of old stories left unresolved, hundreds of people who have hurt them but whom they have not yet forgiven, hundreds of unfulfilled desires they still live as though completing them will heal every wound. But the more they hold, the heavier the soul becomes, because our heart was not made to be a warehouse of past pain. It was made to be a garden, where even a soft breeze can make flowers bloom. And when you start tending to that garden, when you begin to name the unnamed pains, to face the memories you've buried, to notice the must-haves that are silently shaping your choices, you begin to see you do not need as much as you thought. You do not need to be understood all the time. You do not need to always be right. You do not need someone to love you in exactly the way you imagined. You only need to love yourself, with a gaze that holds no judgment, and that is already enough for a peaceful beginning. Letting go of attachment does not make you cold or indifferent. On the contrary, it makes you gentler. You no longer ask people to stay just because you need them. You give them the freedom to choose their path, and you give yourself that freedom too. You no longer lose yourself trying to please someone. You no longer imprison yourself in the image of a good person, a strong person, someone who is always happy. You allow yourself to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be silent when needed. Inner freedom begins there, by removing each layer of the mask you have worn too long, just to be loved. And then you realize you do not need to be anyone else, or to become anything more. You are already worthy of love, already worthy of peace, simply because you are breathing, simply because you are here. From that moment on, what you keep in your life is no longer out of fear of loss, but out of true appreciation. And if one day those things leave, you will not panic, because now you know, true love does not bind, true joy does not depend, and true peace does not come from controlling everything. It comes from the quiet ability to accept when things no longer look like they once did. That is the deepest letting go, not just letting go of things, people, or expectations, but letting go of the self that insists, I need this to be happy. And once you release that self, you are no longer trying to live, you become life itself, flowing freely through you, without limits, without resistance, simply present in every fleeting and beautiful moment. There is a big misunderstanding that many people carry throughout their lives. They believe acceptance means giving up, that it is surrender, passivity, or letting go of all hope. That to accept is to agree with what is wrong, painful, or broken. But in truth, acceptance is not the end of hope. It is the end of resistance to what already is. It is not closing your eyes to reality, but opening them wide, and choosing not to fight it anymore, not expecting it to be something different. Acceptance is an inner state, where you stop struggling with life like a person being chased, and instead stand still and say, all right, I will face this truth, with an open heart. And from that moment you stop running. A new door opens, the door to unconditional peace. In life, it is not what happens to us that makes us suffer. It is our resistance to what happens that keeps the suffering alive. A truth may hurt, but our resistance to that truth is what makes the wound linger. When someone leaves, we do not hurt because they left, but because we do not want to believe they are gone. When we fail, it is not the outcome that breaks us, but our inability to accept that we gave our all and still did not succeed. When illness comes, the pain is not just in the body. It is in our refusal to accept that the body has changed. All emotional pain begins with a quiet voice that says, "It should not be this way." And as long as we hold on to that voice, we are living in the past, wrestling with a reality that no longer exists, and that is why suffering stays. But when we can gently put down that "should have been" and replace it with a slow, mindful breath, we take the first step toward true healing. Acceptance does not mean you have to like what is happening. No one likes loss. No one chooses pain. No one asks for trauma. But acceptance means you are brave enough to stop denying that it is happening. You do not need to sugarcoat it. You do not need to blame anyone. You just need to look at what is, fully. Without adding, without defending, without needing to change it. And when you can do that, something miraculous begins to happen. The pain is no longer a burden you have to carry, but a teacher that shows you humility, patience, and the fragile yet fiercely resilient nature of being human. And then you see, truth is not as terrifying as you once believed, because it is no longer something you have to fight, but something within you, waiting to be understood, to be embraced, and to be held with the gentleness you forgot you always had. In meditation, acceptance is not merely a state, it is a deep, conscious action. It requires you to be fully present with whatever is happening, without avoidance, without judgment. It is when you sit in the middle of a storm without trying to escape. When you hold sadness without rushing to make it disappear. When you allow your tears to fall without feeling ashamed. It is a form of surrender, but not surrender to suffering. Rather to the impermanent nature of life. And within that surrender, a quiet strength begins to rise, the strength of a soul that has stopped fighting what it cannot control, and has made peace with what once broke it. It may take you a long time to truly understand and live in the spirit of acceptance. Because sometimes, your mind understands, but your heart is not ready. And that too, is something to accept. Accept even your inability to accept. No pushing, no demand to change faster. Just be there, like a friend sitting beside someone in pain. Saying nothing, offering no advice, just silently holding a hand so the pain can pass through without being denied. You can do that for yourself. You can become your own first and final companion during the darkest times. And that is the greatest healing, not escaping suffering, but knowing you are no longer alone in it. Then one day, after many upheavals, you will look back and realize, life did not become easier, you simply stopped resisting. You still experience loss. You still get hurt. You still have days when you feel lost, but you no longer scream. Why? Instead, you softly whisper, "So this is what was needed right now." And in that whisper, you are no longer someone swept away by life, but part of it, flowing with it, not trying to force it, not needing to understand it all. You are simply present, fully, honestly, gently, with what is. And perhaps, That is the most profound definition of peace. And then, you will realize that acceptance does not arrive like a sudden flash of light that instantly dissolves all darkness within. It comes slowly, softly, sometimes silently, on a quiet afternoon no one notices. In a passing glance over a place that used to hurt. And suddenly, it does not sting anymore. Not because you forgot, but because you stopped fighting the memory. You stop asking why they did that, why it ended that way, why life was not fair. Those questions once tied you to suffering. And when you stop needing answers, not because you found them, but because you no longer need them, that rope quietly falls away. As if it never existed. And in that stillness, you feel a new space open in your heart, not the emptiness of loneliness, but the spaciousness of someone who has finally let go of the fight against what cannot be changed. True acceptance never comes from forcing, it only comes when you have hurt enough. When you have wandered through enough dark places to know that no resistance can change what has already happened. And strangely, when you finally stop trying to change the past, you step fully into the present. Before that, you lived only in two extremes, longing for what was lost, or worrying about what has not yet come. But acceptance brings you back, here, now, with your true self. No longer bound by what should have been. No longer dragged by a future you cannot control. You see life as it is. You see people as they are. You see yourself as a flowing river, sometimes muddy, sometimes clear, sometimes rushing, sometimes still, but always moving, always alive, always carrying the possibility of renewal, if not blocked by the driftwood of resistance. Acceptance is when you no longer expect life to ask your permission before it changes. When you stop blaming yourself for not being stronger, wiser, quicker, when you no longer need a reason to forgive, or a perfect condition to feel at ease, or clarity to feel safe enough to let go. Acceptance is the state of a heart that no longer clings to what has gone, and no longer fears what has yet to come. It is when you can sit in an empty room, with no voices, no plans, no one beside you, and still not feel alone. Because you know, you are here with yourself. And that presence is enough. It is when you no longer need anyone to validate your worth. No longer need circumstances to prove you are on the right path. You just need to feel your heart beating in awareness. And that is the sign you are walking the most authentic path you can walk. The greatest acceptance is not with the outside world, but with yourself. When you can accept that you have been wrong, been weak, made imperfect choices, when you stop blaming yourself for loving too much, for trusting too early, for holding on too long to what should have been released, you no longer resent yourself for what you did not know, you smile. Because now you do. And in that very moment, a part of your old self dissolves, not because you erased it, but because you stopped judging it. You let it remain, as a part of the map of your life, not hidden, not cut out, but a necessary chapter that helped you become who you are today. And if today you are sitting here, with the intention to live more awake and more gently, then perhaps every past wound has not been in vain. There is one lesson everyone walking the path of meditation eventually learns. There are things we cannot change. And instead of spending a lifetime trying to shift them, we turn inward, to change the way we see, the way we feel, the way we show up. We stop trying to make life easier, and start making our hearts deeper. Not because life becomes less challenging, but because our minds become spacious enough to hold even the imperfect. Like someone walking in the forest no longer afraid of the dark, because they carry their own light. Like someone stepping into the sea no longer afraid of waves, because they have learned how to float with each breath. That is where true acceptance leads us, not to a safer world, but to a steadier inner world, where every storm can pass without shattering a heart that has learned to soften instead of shrink. And if one day you find yourself resisting something, a sadness, a change, a loss, that is okay too. You do not need to blame yourself for not being ready. You only need to notice, I am hurting, and I am resisting. That is enough. Then, take a breath, a slow, steady breath. Place your hand over your heart, gently, and whisper to yourself, everything is unfolding the way it needs to. And I am learning to accept it at my own pace. There is no rush. No one is pushing you. Healing does not come through pressure, it comes through permission. And the moment you give yourself permission not to accept just yet, you have already begun to accept. Perhaps none of us desires suffering. No one actively seeks adversity. And no one wakes up on a perfectly normal morning secretly wishing for something to happen that would break their heart. Yet life, in its own mysterious way, continues to deliver unexpected events to each of us. A sudden goodbye without a farewell. A door slammed shut when we were filled with hope. A body falling ill just when we thought we were at our healthiest. A dream shattering at the very moment we felt closest to making it come true. These moments, when they arrive, often bring us to our knees. We blame, we struggle, we despair, and we ask ourselves what we did wrong to deserve this. And in the storm of emotions, we forget, sometimes, the things that hurt us most are the very things trying to teach us the most important lessons of our lives. The lesson in adversity does not show up right away. It often comes wrapped in a hard shell of pain, buried under questions without answers, and locked behind our inner resistance. Only when we stop trying to escape, stop forcing ourselves to understand everything, and allow ourselves to sit with that pain with openness, does the lesson slowly begin to reveal itself. Maybe we do not see it immediately. Maybe it takes months, years, or an entire chapter of our lives before the heart is strong enough, the mind calm enough, to look back and whisper, "Ah, so that was it." And at that moment, adversity no longer feels like a dark chapter, it becomes a turning point, where the old version of ourselves dissolves, and a more authentic, resilient, and compassionate version is born from the ashes of challenge. No one truly grows from a life of ease. No one truly understands who they are until they lose something they once thought they could never live without. Those who have touched the deepest depths of pain are the ones who understand the true value of peace. And those who have lost everything are often the ones who cherish the smallest things most deeply. This is not romanticizing hardship, it is the essence of growth. Just as fire does not arise from a soft breeze, but only from friction and contact, our awareness only truly awakens when something strong enough breaks through the layers we mistook for ourselves. Adversity is not a comfortable mirror, but it is an honest one, reflecting clearly where we are still fragile, still rigid, still disconnected from who we truly are. The lesson you need may be unlike anyone else's. Each soul has its own path of becoming. Some learn to let go through the loss of a loved one. Some learn self-respect through betrayal. Some learn to listen to their bodies through long illness. Some learn the meaning of love through long, aching loneliness. Whatever your lesson is, know this: it did not come to punish you. It came as an invitation to stop, to look within, to shift the way you live, and to move forward with a heart more open than before. But to see the lesson, one condition must be met. You must be willing to sit in the unknown. You must accept that there will be moments when you cannot explain why this is happening. And you must trust that even if you do not yet have the answer, nothing that happens is meaningless. There are people who, after facing great hardship, not only do not fall, they rise stronger, deeper, and more compassionate, not because they are better, but because they turned inward to listen. They no longer live to avoid pain, they live to learn from it. And when we live that way, adversity is no longer something to get rid of. It becomes an essential part of our spiritual growth. Every loss is a doorway into a deeper understanding of impermanence. Every disappointment is a reminder that happiness does not come from expectation. Every time we fall is a chance to learn how to rise more gently, with less urgency, without blaming ourselves for having been vulnerable. In that tenderness, the light of self-compassion begins to shine. The lessons hidden in adversity are not always comfortable, but they always arrive right on time. The universe has a quiet, precise way of giving us exactly what we need, not earlier, not later, not softer, not harder, just enough for us to cross into a new state of awareness. If we do not run away, and when we learn the lesson, the adversity does not need to repeat. Life becomes gentler, the heart becomes quieter, and you can move forward, not as a survivor, but as someone who has awakened from the very thing that once seemed to break you. And sometimes, the most precious lesson in adversity does not come from anything outside changing, but from being forced to finally sit with yourself. For the first time in years, you stop running. For the first time, you dare to be silent without feeling empty. For the first time, you touch the old wounds you used to hide behind small talk. Travel plans, crowded schedules, or half-hearted smiles. When nothing external can shield you anymore, you meet the truest part of yourself. No roles, no masks, no defense. And in that moment, something profound begins. You realize you are weaker than you thought. You also realize you are more resilient than you imagined. And most importantly, you realize that you do not have to be strong all the time. You do not have to have all the answers. You do not have to always be right. You only need to show up, truthfully, kindly, for yourself, and that is enough. Adversity teaches us how to slow down. When we are forced to stop amid the rush of life, we begin to hear the quietest sounds: our heartbeat, our breath, the soft cry of a soul long ignored because we were too busy living someone else's expectations. We begin to realize how long we have been alive without truly living. How long we have existed just to prove something, to maintain some image, to hold onto something we are not even sure we still need. And in that awakening, we are no longer the same. Even if nothing changes outside, something has cracked open inside, not to collapse, but to let light in. The light of humility, of gratitude, of a fresh perspective on life. That some things we once resented were actually invisible hands guiding us back to ourselves. Adversity does not take from us what we truly need. It only takes away what, if we kept it, would prevent us from growing. It takes illusions. It takes relationships that have served their purpose. It takes away shallow confidence and replaces it with deeper self-awareness. It takes away well-laid plans to teach us how to live with flexibility, gentleness, and openness to the unknown. And over time, you no longer see adversity through the eyes of a victim. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "What do I need to learn from this?" That question does not make the pain disappear, but it changes entirely how you walk through it. From being someone pushed over a cliff, you become the observer, someone learning to listen, to open, to move forward with more depth, not with hurried steps, but with a heart forged in the fire of loss. Another quiet miracle that adversity brings is a deeper connection with others. Only when you have suffered can you truly understand a look of hopelessness. Only when you have fallen can you truly know how not to judge someone who is struggling. And the wounds within you, once healed with understanding, become bridges where seemingly unrelated souls can meet in silent empathy. You do not need to say much. Sometimes, just sitting quietly beside someone is enough to offer them the most precious thing: the feeling that they are not alone in the storm. That is a gift only those who have walked through the dark can offer, not through theory, but through a presence that is sincere. And in helping someone rise, you also take one more step on your own journey of healing. One day, you will look back at those years of upheaval, and instead of bitterness, you will smile, not because you forgot what happened, but because you clearly see how much you grew because of it. You see that without those seemingly dark days, perhaps you would never have learned how to truly listen, never dared to be honest with your feelings, never known that behind vulnerability lies a gentle strength. And you will quietly give thanks, not for the pain itself, but for what it gave you: the rediscovery of your truest self, not perfect, but real, not invincible, but whole, not always shining, but humble enough to no longer need to prove anything. And that is the hidden gift adversity offers, a gift no one asks for, but everyone needs. It is not found in what you lose, but in what you find after all the layers fall away: a life that is tender, truthful, and intact within, a current of life that no longer runs from pain, but knows how to listen to what the pain is trying to say. A presence that no longer fears loss, because it knows, whatever is taken, what you learn and who you become can never be lost. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all: that this life, in all its unexpected changes and silent hardships, is always guiding us back to ourselves, in a way that only a heart once broken can truly understand. In a world that grows louder and more rushed every day, where people are pulled between endless information, responsibilities, expectations, and the constant noise of modern life, mindfulness, the practice of being present, has become not just a choice, but a deep necessity for the soul. Mindfulness is not a complicated technique, nor is it a privilege for those with the time to meditate in a forest. Mindfulness is simply the ability to be fully present with whatever is happening right now, right here, with full attention and kindness toward your own experience. Without judgment, without resistance, without needing it to be different. And strangely, in that simple presence, everything begins to shift, not because the world changes, but because the way we see, feel, and touch life becomes deeper, softer, and more compassionate. Without mindfulness, we live like people dreaming in daylight. The body is here, but the mind is scattered, half lost in the past with regret, blame, and unfinished sorrow. and half lost in the future with worry, calculations, and unnamed fears. And between those two directions, the present, the only moment truly happening, is forgotten. We drink tea without tasting it. We hear birds but do not truly listen. We talk with someone while our mind is elsewhere. And so, we live without really living, just drifting through life like a shadow. Rushed, tired, and hollow. But the moment we pause, breathe deeply, bring our attention back to the body, to the sensations, to the breath moving in and out, we notice something extraordinary. The present lacks nothing. It only asks for our presence. To be here, without doing anything more. To be here like a kind friend, quietly beside life. Mindfulness does not erase difficulties, but it helps us stand firm in the midst of them without being swept away. It does not block emotions, but allows us to see them as they arise, move, and fade, like clouds drifting across the sky of the mind. We no longer react instantly to anger, fear, hurt, or craving. We begin to pause, observe, smile, and choose to respond with wisdom rather than reflex. In that pause, a space opens, a space of freedom. Freedom is not doing whatever we want whenever we want. It is the ability not to be pulled by blind impulses. It is the ability to sit with an emotion without being devoured by it. The ability to go through a situation without letting it distort who we are. That is what mindfulness brings, not flashy, not dramatic, but deep and transforming from the inside out. Some ask, I am too busy. How can I practice mindfulness? But mindfulness asks you to go nowhere. It requires no temple bell, no meditation cushion, no perfect setting. You can practice it while washing dishes, walking, drinking water, or listening to someone with full attention. Mindfulness does not require more time, it only needs your presence in the moment. When eating, know that you are eating. When speaking, know that you are speaking. When feeling sad, know that you are feeling sad. Not to fix the emotion, but to live with it kindly. To let it breathe, to let it exist, to let it pass, like any wind that has a beginning and an end. And when we allow everything to simply be, without force, it all finds its proper place, within a mind no longer disturbed by waves. Mindfulness is a door that opens you to yourself. You will see long-standing habits you once mistook for your nature. You will discover hidden corners of your mind that you used to avoid. You will recognize wounds that have not yet healed but were covered up. And not to judge yourself, but to love yourself more. Because when you clearly see your weakness, you stop blaming yourself for not being strong. When you see your fear, you no longer need to pretend to be brave. When you see your exhaustion, you know to rest instead of forcing yourself to push forward. That is the miracle of mindfulness. It does not ask you to become someone else. It brings you back to yourself, honestly and kindly. And when you can rest in yourself, you no longer need to search for happiness somewhere far away. Because you now know, each moment lived with full presence is sacred. And miraculously, when you live in mindfulness, you not only heal yourself, you begin to radiate that presence to those around you. You become someone who listens without rushing to judge, who loves without needing ownership, who shows up with others without making them feel small. You bring a calm energy to the places you pass through, simply by being fully present. You don't need to speak much or prove anything. Your presence itself becomes a silent blessing. Like a candle that makes no sound, but whose light can warm an entire room. That is mindfulness, quiet, patient, deeply healing, and strong. Once you walk that path, you no longer want to return to your old way of being. Not because you changed the world, but because you changed how you show up in it. As you practice mindfulness long enough, you begin to realize that the deepest depth is not in breathing techniques, sitting rituals, or long silent hours. It's in how you regard each moment as it arises. That no moment is ordinary if you truly are present. A ray of sunlight brushing your hand in the morning. A drop of dew on a leaf as you pass by. A stranger's soft smile on the street. One moment sitting with someone familiar in silence. These things happen every day, but only through mindfulness do you truly live them. Instead of rushing through them like a restless guest. And as you start to live deeply into life's smallest details, you discover that beauty was never missing. It only lacked a soul still enough to see. Mindfulness does not ask you to escape the world. On the contrary, it teaches you how to stay fully within it. Even through chaos, worry, conflict, and sudden change, it teaches you not to fear your own emotions anymore. It teaches you that no emotion is wrong, only emotions not looked at deeply, not held, not listened to with a non-judging heart. When you are mindful with sadness, sadness no longer dominates you. When mindful with anger, your reason is not clouded by rage. Mindful with loneliness, you don't fear being alone. You begin to learn to befriend yourself and discover that inner stillness is not emptiness, but a gentle refuge in the midst of change. And then you begin to notice a subtle yet powerful shift in your daily life. You still go to work, cook, meet others, face surprises, but in each action, part of you observes, listens, remains present with a softer heart. You no longer react hastily to harsh words. You no longer feel unsettled when plans fall apart. You no longer need to do something extraordinary to prove your worth. You become quieter, deeper, and from that calm presence, you become more trustworthy, not because you know all the answers, but because you have learned to listen before speaking, to breathe before acting, and to smile before judging someone. And from that grounded presence, relationships emerge not from expectations or defense, but from genuine being and understanding nurtured through every mindful moment. The interesting thing is, once you live mindfully long enough, you stop asking how to meditate, how to practice, how to heal, because you understand. Every moment is a meditation. Every experience is a doorway home. Everything that happens, even things you once wanted to avoid, can become fertile ground for awakening when you know how to stay with it without judgment. You no longer need to look for something outside, because what you seek, peace, understanding, completeness, is already within. And there is no shorter path to true peace than to breathe slowly and truly be present, right here, right now. Then one day, you will sit quietly in life, hear a bird sing, see sunlight through the leaves, feel a breeze on your skin, and tears will fall, not out of sadness, but out of being moved by the miraculous beauty of an ordinary moment. You realize how many years you carried dreams, worries, ambitions, and finally, you rediscovered depth within simplicity that you had forgotten. And in that moment, you don't need anyone's recognition, no proof of worth. You only need a breath, and you know you are alive. Truly alive, not by achievements, plans, or excitement, but by the deep awareness quietly flowering like a flower that doesn't need to show off. That is inner happiness, the happiness of someone who has found their way home to themselves. There is a silent truth that anyone who walks the path of mindfulness eventually realizes. No change is lasting if it only happens outside. Every real healing, every step forward, every miracle begins with inner transformation. The mind is the root. And once the root shifts, everything else changes too. But strangely, we often seek change on the outside. We want others to behave differently. We want a better job, happier relationships, easier circumstances. We imagine that fixing the world will bring peace. Yet even slight external change often leaves the mind restless. Old wounds reappear in new forms. Closed loops quietly reopen, until, after weary efforts to alter circumstances, we pause and whisper in silence. Perhaps what needs changing is not the world, but how I see it. That is when you step into the threshold of genuine transformation of the mind. But inner transformation is not a flash of light, or a miraculous night after which you wake up someone else. It is a journey, a quiet, deep, and sometimes slow-burning process like subterranean water flowing unseen, unhurried yet steadfast. Inner change begins when you dare to look at yourself, without excuses. Without judgment, without roses, just looking. As if standing in front of a great mirror that shows every shadow clearly. You see beliefs that are old, wounds still unhealed, unconscious habits carried from childhood. You see fear of abandonment that leads you to control others. You see anger covering your unspoken need to be heard. You see perfectionism born from a feeling of inner insufficiency. And when you no longer avoid them, no longer hide them, the first miracle occurs. You begin to feel compassion for yourself. Transformation does not begin with trying to change yourself. It begins with compassion. From an invisible embrace you offer to the wounded part of yourself that you once rejected. From a gentle nod to old mistakes that once weighed on you. From the acknowledgement, I used to be that way, but now I am learning differently. And when that compassion arises from within, you begin to see, you no longer have to strain to become better. You simply let go of what is no longer you. Like a branch of a tree that does not force itself to sprout leaves, instead it receives sun and nourishment. And naturally it buds. So does your mind. Once you stop judging and force, and start listening, understanding, loving, then the mind matures on its own. Transforms on its own, not because it is coerced, but because it is held with kindness. On that journey you will gradually notice the shifts, subtle, not dramatic or obvious. A reaction you used to have is no longer there. Something you once could not forgive you now breathe through with ease. An emotion that used to suffocate you now observe without being carried away. You remain yourself, but something softens, widens, steadies, like a lake that once roiled with waves now begins to calm. Others will sense it too, not through words, but through your presence. A transformed inner state does not need proof or explanation. Its stillness and depth in your energy invite others home to themselves. Yet this path is not always easy. Some days you feel you are backsliding. Moments you think you have moved forward. You revert to an old version of yourself. Fears that seemed gone return when you are vulnerable again. But please do not despair. Transformation is not a straight line. It is a spiral. Each return takes you deeper. helps you understand more fully, embrace more compassionately, and if you are patient, gentle, you will see no step is wasted, no moment is meaningless. Each pause to breathe, each time you forgive yourself, each moment you choose understanding over anger, love over fear, all those moments are part of the process. A process unseen from the outside, but gradually transforms you from someone living by reflex into someone living by awareness, from seeking outward answers to realizing all answers lie within. When transformation truly takes root, you will never again be the same, even though everything outward may remain familiar. You continue to live in the same room, walk the same streets, meet the same faces, but you see them with new eyes. No resistance, no expectation, no judgment. You observe people doing the best they can within the limits of their understanding. You see life not as a series of tests to pass, but as a flow to fully inhabit, moment by moment. And within you exists a profound peace, not derived from anything you possess, but from having become a vast ground where everything is welcome without need for fixing. That is the highest form of transformation, when you no longer need life to change for you to feel peace, because you already are that peace. As you go deeper into inner transformation, you increasingly realize this is not the journey to become a perfect, unhurt, mistake-free version of yourself. This is the journey to become whole. Someone who knows that within them resides both light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, goodness and fragments not yet healed, and still can love themselves as this entire being. Because you do not need to become someone else to deserve peace. You only need to release disguises, self-defense mechanisms, roles you thought necessary to be loved. Bit by bit, you uncover, bit by bit, release. And then, enlightenment does not arrive with a blazing gong, but you return to yourself again, simple, soft, alive, fully human. At the deepest level, inner transformation is not about fixing yourself. It is daring to look at your truest essence and say, I am still here with you. I will not abandon you anymore. It is when you sit with your fear, placing a hand on it like you would comfort a crying child, and instead of pushing it away, say, I see you. I hear you. I won't leave just because you are uncomfortable. In that moment, you are no longer a victim of the emotion. You are its friend. And all transformation begins from that friendship. Nothing is more gentle. Nothing is stronger. Because what you once tried to control for years now receives non-judgmental recognition, and in that gaze, everything begins to soften. Everything begins to melt. Everything gently returns to its rightful place, not dominating you, not scaring you, but simply being part of your human experience. You will realize that all healing tools, meditation, journaling, art, mindful walking, breath work, music, nature, are bridges. But no bridge matters as much as where it leads. And what it leads to is nowhere outside, it leads inside you. To a place of intact life that never fades. A timeless clarity never lost. A place where you do not need to become special, because your authentic presence already is the most special gift. And when you can sit quietly within yourself, not needing to prove anything, not resisting anything, not running anywhere anymore, you have reached freedom. Freedom not because you have overcome everything, but because you have learned to stay with your true, whole, vulnerable self that continues to learn each day. Inner transformation does not remove life's changes, but gives you a stable base amid all upheaval. It does not make you numb, but makes you deeply capable of feeling everything without being drowned. It does not turn you above humanity, but brings you back to it. More complete, kinder, more real. And when you live from that place, where your mind is no longer led by old fears and expectations, then every action, word, and thought becomes clear like a mountain spring. You do not need success to feel worthy. You do not need recognition to feel present. You do not need everything to go smoothly to feel happy. Because you know, what comes is welcomed, what leaves is allowed, and within you exists a stillness vast beyond all those things. Perhaps, this is the quiet destination of any spiritual journey, not to escape the world, but to live within it with a heart that no longer panics. So that you continue everyday life, eating, sleeping, working, loving, even feeling hurt, but from a deeper place. Being fully you. Knowing everything unfolding is as it needs to. And you are on the right path, even when it twists. Even when you can't tell if you are moving forward or back. Because you understand that each mindful breath, each return within, each moment you choose kindness over reaction, is a step of transformation. And with each step, you are not just changing yourself, but quietly, steadily, lovingly helping to heal the world. And then, when transformation has reached deep enough depths, you will realize that this journey is not just for you. It is also a silent gift you carry for others around you. You don't need to speak, to explain, or to prove that you have changed. The quietness in the way you live, the way you listen, the way you breathe and walk through life, is enough for others to feel. There is something in you that brings them peace. Maybe it is an unjudging gaze. Maybe it is being fully present when they just need someone beside them. Maybe it is the gentle patience you show yourself, and it ripples outward to others. And so, inner transformation no longer remains a personal journey. It becomes a light, a seed sown quietly into the consciousness of others, inviting them to ask, "What if I could live with such calm too?" And so, a chain of awakening spreads, not by grand slogans, not by sudden change, but by deep, steady presence in people who learn to return within. A healed world does not begin with external revolutions, but with individuals brave enough to sit with their own darkness. Walk through it without judgment. Remain long enough to catch sight of the light behind. You are one of those people. Brave, not because you are unafraid, but because you choose to keep going in spite of fear. Brave, not because you overcame everything, but because you are learning to walk kindly, even while still wounded. Brave, not because you are strong, but because you learned to soften enough to forgive, to let go, to trust in goodness deeper than what eyes can see. And perhaps, the most beautiful outcome of inner transformation is not becoming someone perfect, but becoming someone real. Someone who no longer loses their true self to please others. Someone who no longer chases ideals that do not belong to them. Someone who no longer panics when the world shifts, but knows how to return. To listen, to gently adjust themselves to the rhythm of awareness. You no longer need to promise anything to the future. No longer need to cling to anything from the past, because you understand everything is here, in this moment. And if you can breathe with full love right now, if you can release control right now, if you can choose kindness with yourself right now, then you are already transforming. Right here, nothing more is needed, Because true transformation is not loud, flashy, or needing recognition. It is something you sense in a quiet morning when you awaken and your heart is no longer burdened with anxiety. It is something you notice when facing an old situation, and you no longer react as your old self would. It is the subtle exhale of relief, the kinder eyes, the softer handshake, tiny things so small only you notice, but you know that from these little things, a person is changing, a life is changing, a world is changing, one breath at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. And one day, when you look back on your own journey, you will smile, not because you became great, but because you never abandoned yourself, even in your darkest hour. And thus you complete a circle, returning not to where you started, but to where you truly belong, a peaceful, expansive, abundant inner home. And when you listen deeply within, you'll see that inner transformation was never a journey to achieve something, but a journey to return. Not to a specific place, nor to some ideal version of yourself, but back to a pure state of mind that no longer needs to resist life, no longer craves recognition, understanding, or love in the way the world describes. You no longer have to fight yourself. No need to fix your cracks. No more goals to become better. Instead, you begin to live like a stream, unaware where it will flow, but always clear in the spot where it flows. You sit in silence and see that everything is simply as it is. Emotions come and go like waves. Thoughts arise and vanish like smoke. No explanation needed, no one to convince, nothing to hold on to or push away. Only a supreme presence, not of the controlling self, but of life itself knowing itself in each passing moment. And the strangest thing is, when you stop seeking transformation, true transformation begins. When you stop trying to be enlightened, enlightenment gently seeps into every cell of your being. When you stop asking, "How can I find peace?" peace begins to appear, as if all those years, you just needed to stop and open the door, but you were busy chasing keys in a million theories, methods, goals, and illusions. Now you only need to breathe, a conscious breath, uncut by craving, undisturbed by fear, a breath you don't force or do anything with, just let it flow in and out, like life flowing through you without invitation. And in that moment, you are no longer the practitioner, you become the practice itself. No longer the healer, but healing itself. No longer the one searching for peace, but peace knowing itself in vibrant presence. It is wondrous. When you live from that place, where there is nothing to add or subtract, each step you take becomes a prayer. Each touch, each gaze, each silence you create in conversation, becomes a field where another person may return within themselves. Not because you teach them something, but because you no longer erect barriers between you and them. Your presence carries no expectations, no demands, no need for validation, and that is the safest energy a human can offer the world. When transformation rises from your root, you become space, not empty, but spacious, a presence that doesn't push, doesn't shrink others, but allows them to simply be themselves. And when more people embody that, the world begins to shift, not by slogans, not by movements, but by the deep silence and tenderness of hearts that have learned the way back. Inner transformation, ultimately, is a never-ending journey, because you are not walking toward a destination. You are walking so that each step becomes a moment lived in full. And if something remains after all is said and done, it is gratitude, gratitude for never giving up, for daring to look at yourself when everything was darkest, for daring to stay with the emotions you once tried to flee, for daring to breathe on even when you were not sure you were on the right path. Gratitude because in that journey home, you met your true self, not the wounded, resisting ego, but the intact light that has never left. It has always been there, since you were a child. Through years of being lost, disappointed, bruised, and now, when you remain long enough, it finally gets to say, I am here. I have always been here. And in that moment, you know you are truly home, no longer needing to go anywhere. No longer needing anything more. Because you have it all, within. When you have moved through the layers of suffering, of letting go, of impermanence and transformation, a final truth emerges, quietly, without flourish, yet as clear as a temple bell sounding in the stillness of midnight. Everything that happens in your life, wherever it comes from, calls you to take responsibility for yourself. Responsibility here does not mean blame, nor self-reproach. In the spirit of mindfulness, responsibility is a deep awareness that this life, these emotions, these reactions, these choices, they are all the results of your mind. When someone hurts you, you have the right to feel pain, but also the responsibility to observe why that pain touched you so deeply. When a life event strikes, you may feel sad or disoriented, but it is equally important to ask honestly, what seeds did I plant unconsciously that resulted in this fruit? Not to punish yourself, but to return to your root, because from there, you have the power to choose anew, to sow a new cause, to walk differently. Taking responsibility for yourself means you no longer live like a leaf drifting in the river of circumstance. Instead, you begin to steer your life, even if the currents remain strong. You don't blame others for leaving, because you know they too live within the limits of their understanding. You don't curse life for perceived injustice, because you understand fairness does not come from external distribution, but from your inner attitude toward everything experienced. Responsibility means daring to look at yourself, at limited beliefs, unhealed wounds, defensive reactions, incomplete desires, and say with love, I will not repeat this pattern anymore. No one can live for you. No one can heal you. No one can meditate for you, breathe for you, transform for you. Each of us must walk through our own fire, feel our own pain, and sit alone in the night facing inner calls from deep within. And this is not punishment, it is the privilege of a soul growing up. To mature through its own experience, to become the keeper of its own light. There may be times when you feel overwhelmed, times when you wish someone would rescue you. But then you will realize, the only one who stays, the one who can love you completely, knows what you've endured, is yourself. And when you begin living from that place, not seeking someone to redeem you, but learning to illuminate yourself, each step becomes firmer. Each word contains more insight. Each action springs from trust rather than fear. Responsibility ceases to be a burden and becomes a gift, the ability to choose again, to start again, to be free through your own mindful awareness. If you can, see each day as a new chance to live responsibly with yourself, not for the sake of others, not to please anyone, but so you can look in the mirror each morning and quietly say, I'm on the right path. I'm with myself. Because ultimately real freedom does not come from controlling circumstances, but from no longer denying your role in anything that happens. You no longer live as a victim. You become a co-creator, not through power, but through deep acceptance and gentle commitment. A commitment to live truthfully, awake, and holy. And only when you fully embrace this responsibility does life truly begin to blossom within you. Because at the depths of all suffering, what keeps us stuck is not the circumstance, but our refusal to take responsibility for our own minds. We blame others for not loving correctly. We resent life for taking away what we once tried so hard to hold. We fault ourselves for being too weak or too trusting. But we forget. All these reactions are ways of escaping the truth that we, and only we, decide how we live with what has happened. When you stop blaming, you do not lose strength. You become the only one capable of changing everything. Because when you recognize, I take responsibility for my emotions, my choices, my wounds, right at that moment, you hold the key to freeing yourself from them. You don't need anyone to apologize. You can forgive anyway. You don't need anyone to repair what was broken. You can still heal. You don't need circumstances to change. You can still find peace. Because you step out of the victim role and into the stance of being the author of your own life. It is a silent turning point, sometimes happening in a long night unseen by others. Sometimes arriving after years of grief, confusion, and private tears, when you suddenly pause and say to yourself, enough. From today on, I will live differently, not harder or more closed off, but with clear awareness that I cannot control other people, but I can choose how to respond. I cannot change my past, but I can heal how I carry that past. I cannot prevent bad things from happening, but I can choose to grow from them. That is the beginning of inner freedom. And no one else can give it to you. It must open from within. With the courage to say, I have been wrong. I have been blind. I have repeated patterns that caused suffering, but because I dared to see that clearly, I can also transcend them. It's ironic. When we blame, we think we're strong, but in truth, we surrender our power to others. Only when we stop blaming do we truly reclaim our power. Responsibility here is not a heavy duty, but an act of love with ourselves. Acknowledging we deserve a life no longer entrapped in old stories. Tenderness for our past, even if it hurt, because now we are grown enough to release it. Compassion for even those who hurt us, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because we deserve peace. And to do this, you don't need to be perfect. You only need to make a small promise. I will not turn my back on myself again. That is the true beginning of responsibility, not flashy, not loud, but day by day, bringing you closer to yourself, and closer to a freedom that no one can take from you. And one day, when you are calm enough to look back at your journey, you will recognize that all the pain, all the shattered relationships, all the disappointment, imbalance, doubt, and waywardness, they did not arrive to punish you. They came to back you gently to the realization you gave too much power away to the world outside, and now it is time to get it back. Get it back by coming home, by recognizing no one owes you happiness. No one outside can fill the void inside you except you. No one is responsible for your peace, your awakening, your healing, your growth, your choices, and even how you love yourself. Responsibility is not something to carry, it is something you are granted, as proof that you no longer live in fantasy. You are ready to live truly, not hiding in pain, Not playing familiar roles. Not waiting for someone to rescue you. You begin reconstructing your life from the broken bricks, step by step, with quiet resolve. And trust in something deeper than any rationale. And miraculously, just when you take full responsibility, you begin to be reborn, not into a more perfect version, but into someone more authentic. You allow yourself to make mistakes without hiding away. You allow yourself to feel sadness without collapsing. You allow yourself to be hurt without forcing yourself to be strong. And by doing so, you become grounded, not because you are gifted or invincible, but because you are honest with yourself to the point that nothing can shake you. People often believe freedom is about not being tied down. But true freedom only comes when you fully own the choices you make, and thus, you no longer harbor blame, no longer carry regret, no longer wait for others to change so that you can feel at peace. You stop trying to fix others. You begin to transform. And when you change, something in the world around you, somehow, begins to change too. No more old loops. No more familiar scripts. You are rewriting your life story, with a mindful hand, and a heart that no longer seeks to blame anyone, not even yourself. You may still stumble, still feel weak at times, still want to return to familiar patterns, but just a single mindful breath. A moment of pause and the question, am I living aligned with the truth within? Reminds you that you do not need to be perfect to take responsibility. You only need to be honest enough, brave enough, patient enough not to give up on yourself. And that is the deepest strength, not the strength of someone who has never fallen, but of someone who dares to rise and keep going, over and over again, each time they forget who they are. The greatest maturity is not when you change the whole world, but when you look honestly at yourself and say, I accept everything that has passed, and I choose to live differently from today. Because then, you are no longer running from your past, you're turning it into fertile soil to sow a present that is deeper, more awake, and fully alive. If you are still here, quietly listening until the final moment, I believe part of you has truly touched something deeper than words and concepts, something quietly opening. Breathing lightly, nodding in agreement with yourself. Because all that you have just heard is not theory. These are the whispers your heart has long known. You are only now quiet enough to hear them clearly. And if something within you is shifting, even subtly, please trust it. It is a sign that you are beginning to return. No need to hurry, no need for perfection, just authenticity. For the journey of awakening is not a race. It is a return. One mindful breath. One conscious step. One intentional choice in everyday life. If this video has sparked something in you, a feeling, a reflection, a moment of deep seeing, please consider leaving a comment. Not to receive a response, but so that you can see yourself through your words. And maybe, that thread of shared reflection will become a small light guiding someone else who is also wandering, just as you once were. If you sense that this space, Silent Soul Garden, is a haven you wish to return to when your heart grows weary and your mind needs calm, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Every day, there will be videos like a gentle breeze, a peaceful night for your spirit, a chance for you to sit and speak with yourself honestly. No rush, no noise, only you, and the silence needed to grow. Thank you, not only for listening, but for choosing to stay. Staying with yourself, staying with awareness, and staying on a journey that is deeper, gentler, more human. See you in the next moment of peace.